NBA should take us up on this and just like after we publish this podcast, they should be like, dang, they right, and then those should be the criteria is met. But it's just
But give us our credit if y'all do that, please.
yeah. Cut us a little check too. You feel me? So
Might well just have us on the show.
get us on TNT inside the NBA, and that'll be even better too. But it's just our suggestions. Just nothing crazy. Yo, what's up, everybody? This is another episode of the BeBall Jones podcast featuring the man, the myth, the legend, the defensive player of the year, Nelson Haskins. What's up, bro?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Man, I am wonderful, man. Just lovely. What about you?
I'm good, man. I'm glad to hear you lovely out here, my boy.
Yeah, man. So, as I introduce you on every episode now as a defensive player of the year, there were certain terms and conditions that you had to meet to qualify for that award. And nobody really knows what that terms and conditions are, like what you have to do to get that award, really. Like we just like give it to people because they play defense, basically. That's just he's a great defensive player. We feel like he's the best this year, so let's give it to him. And sometimes it's cool, but there are certain years, especially in the NBA, where it's just like, hold on now. Like, wait. I feel like this guy deserves it a lot more than this guy. Or when it comes to MVP, or when it comes to Coach of the Year. And the NBA never really gave us a true definition of what the qualifications are and what is the criteria behind each award. So this episode, we're finally going to give the official terms and conditions, the qualifications, the criteria, the standards of what these awards should be. When I say official, I mean official as far as this podcast, because we're not like the NBA podcast. So NBA should take us up on this and just like after we publish this podcast, they should be like, dang, they right. And then those should be the criteria is met. But it's just
But give us our credit if y'all do that, please.
yeah. Cut us a little check too. You feel me? So
might well just have us on the show.
Get us on TNT, inside the NBA, and that'll be even better too. But it's just our suggestions. Just nothing crazy.
Why are we on the same time?
Yeah, man. So what award you want to start with, man? Like what award do you feel like we should start off the whole shebang with?
Well, your boy, I don't know if you heard, but your boy was defensive player of the year here in our league. So it would only be right if we started with that one. So but I think the defensive player of the year is a good place to start.
All right, so kicking this discussion off with defensive player of the year. So each year, obviously, the best defensive player of that year is given that award. So in your mind, how do you feel like the NBA gives out that award? Like, what do you think like their criteria is for who gets the defensive player of the year?
So I think their criteria is based a lot on numbers and impact. Because for those who don't know, NBA awards are voted on like broadcasters and like journalists and things like that. People who cover the games, they vote on who should be MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man, all that, because they are constantly watching. But a lot of times that kind of stuff is based on numbers. Because they watch basketball, they know basketball, but they'll watch it. They'll take what they see, but they're also going to refer to these numbers. Like, okay, how much impact does he really have? And whether his stats look like for those who don't know, analytics plays a big role in it. Like defensive win shares is a stat now. Like how much does your defense contribute to winning? Now, how they come up with the stat, I couldn't tell you, but there's a lot of the numbers put into it, which I kind of don't necessarily agree with, but it is what it is. But my own definition of what defensive player of the year is, whose defensive impact, defensive presence, I should say, has the biggest impact for his team. So, whose team, like what player provides so much of an impact on defense that it changes the game for their team? Like, and I feel like a lot of guys are known as defenders, but won't ever get credit to be a defensive player of the year candidate because it's so based on numbers. Because if I'm a say Marcus Smart, and every night I guard the best guard on the other team. If I lock the best guard up or keep him under control, I did my job. If his stats say he averaged 1.2 steals and like zero point 0.8 blocks, he's not going to be in the defensive player of the year running. And he's only going to average like maybe 4 or 5 rebounds at the most. So I feel like the NBA numbers so much to decide who is the best defenders. It's kind of misguided because some guys, as we know, some guys' presence and impact doesn't show up in the stat sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So my own definition of what it should be, let me say, is the person whose defensive presence has the biggest impact on the game. So that would be like Rudy Gobert, who's won several defensive player of the years. He deserves to be in there because he has a presence defensively. Like it's undeniable. Guys can't get layups on him. Like he makes the offense's job more difficult by him just being there. And he's not the only person his size, so it's not about him just being tall, but he actually has a knack for like defending the rim, protecting the rim, and he makes the other team's job difficult. So he deserves all the credit he gets. But sometimes the league has their way of going about picking it tailored to guys like Rudy Gobert. He's going to average double digit rebounds. He's a great shot blocker, so he's going to be close to the tops of the league in blocks. He might get close to a steal a game just by being, in the right place and, doing, being solid on defense. He'll get a steal. So then when you just only look at numbers, it's like, oh, well, this guy's the best defender, like hands
Mm-hmm.
down. But sometimes like guys whose numbers don't show up in the stat sheet. I mean, whose presence don't show up in the stat sheet, they get lost in the shuffle when we talk about defense. So my own definition, like I said, whose presence has the most impact on the defensive end in the league, and that's who should win Defensive Player of the Year. So, what would be your definition?
Um, yeah, I agree with you though. I feel like the NBA pushes numbers and kind of like the popular sound. Like this sounds cool, so I'm gonna push this narrative a little bit more. Uh, this looks popular, so I'm gonna push this one a little bit more too, rather than the actual impact that a player has. So like they really go based off of numbers, who's the leading blocks getter, who's the leading steals, and like you said, win shares and all these other analytical stats that shoot probably 80% of us don't even know and really understand of what that really means and what it really is. So um I don't even think some of these journals and stuff really know what this stuff really means for real, for real. To be honest with you, I think it's just like, oh, plus minus. He has this plus minus, so this must be good. Okay, what does plus minus really mean? All right, whatever. You don't know, but but yeah, I just feel like when it comes to defensive player of the year, they look at for a big man his rebounds, his blocks, maybe his steals, and plus minus, and like you said, the win shares that he has. For a guard, it's going to be mainly steals, maybe his rebounds, and um, like I said, well, just regular stat stuff, and then when it comes down to like my definition of it is going to be pretty much like yours, like your impact. So I have to base your impact off of stats play a role, and I'm trying to like throw our stats at the window, but stats play a role into it. But the actual eye test, like I have to sit down and watch film and see, are you making Steph Curry work for his 30 shots? I mean 30 points, or is he getting off his effortless stuff? Like how deep in his bag does he have to go? So that's like the eye test of it. That takes a little more work to do, honestly. And then, like, if I was a journalist, I'll look at the stats. I'll watch some film on you, and I'll see what you're doing against the top scorers, the top players, top matches, whatever that is. And my last thing, I sit down and talk like, yo, KD, who are some guys that you struggle with, man? Like, or I sit down, like, what's your thoughts on this player? What your thoughts on this player? What your thoughts on this player? Because honestly, that's probably like probably the second easiest way is to get your information. You know, just literally just asking these guys, or like, yo, what you think about this dude? Oh man, he tough. Like, he don't get enough respect and credit for what he does. Because if anybody knows who plays good defense, it's the people going against them. Like, that cosign from players means the most out of anything. So, um, if I was in that position, that's what I do. I talk to the actual players who are up there, the KDs, the LeBrons, the Stephs, the Jaws. I literally go and talk to these players and be like, yo, what do you think about this player? What do you think about that player? I watch the film and I, do my own little due diligence of watching that, and I look at the stats and seeing how much your impact really changed the game, because a team defender won't get the stat recognition of an on ball defender. So me blowing up every play that you see because I'm in the right spot, like, they want to get the ball and swing it over here, but I'm helping over here, so that blows up that play. I have to swing it back the other way. You don't see that in the stat, but that's an obvious benefit that I've given to the defensive end. So um, that's where the film section comes in and really talking to players and coaches and seeing. But that's just kind of where my definition comes into, where the impact that you have from, like you said, the non-stat things that you have to look into, of course, the stats, but then talking to the players and seeing what they have to say, because that cosign from a player means a lot more than pretty much anything else you can throw at me. So um, that's what I feel like it comes down to, honestly, like your impact and what you bring to the game. So I just feel like it's pretty simple when it comes to that part. Like, well, I don't say simple because you got to look at the non-number stuff, but that's just how I feel about defensive player of the year.
Yeah, and see, this kind of hurt me because I'm defensive player of the year, but my numbers back me up, so I can't. Numbers definitely play a role in because
Yeah.
uh I was top 5 in rebounds per game, and then I was number 1 in blocks per game in our league. Really, and I was top 10 in the nation in block shots in total block shots. So like my numbers spoke for me, but the 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 awards are voted on by coaches. Every head coach and head assistant coach, I think, I'm pretty sure, gets to vote on awards. So two votes every school basically. They vote on all the awards. And like I had coaches and players, not players, all and not all players, but like most coaches was like, "Hey man, I hope you win defensive player of the year," or "Hey man, you're gonna be defensive player of the year," or "Hey, you better win defensive player of the year." Like
Hmm.
guys say, like coaches said some stuff like that to me, and that meant a lot to me because I was like, okay, it's not just me feeling this way, because of course I want to win, I think I should win, but when other coaches say that on other teams, especially if we beating them and things like that, and they have the uh the courtesy to be like, hey man, I hope you win defensive player of the year. So that meant a lot to me. So that let me know it wasn't just me. But I think that's the best way to really go about deciding these awards. Like journalists and broadcasters, all of them have never played basketball.
Hmm.
Like I'm sure some of them have, but all of them, none of them, I'm quite certain none of them played on the NBA level.
Yeah, only a
Because if they
handful have.
did, yeah, right, because if they did, they wouldn't be journalists. Like they'll be still around the game. But uh I think having coaches decide who wins those awards would be the best way to go about it because coaches are the one game planning for guys like that. I think
Hmm.
coaches decide MVPs, defensive player of the year, six man of the years, everything. Like coaches are the ones who had to literally try to work around certain guys, and that
Hmm.
lets you know who the best are. If I had the game plan for you or against you, and like have to figure something out to stop you, you will have an impact. So I feel like coaches are the best ones to ask about things like that. But they don't pay me to make these decisions. So I'm just gonna keep playing and enjoying. But thank God that our league does that. Because if not, who knows what journalists might have said. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, it's the fifth seed, so journalists might be like, "How can you be defensive player of the year on the fifth seed?" Some of
Yeah.
them might
Yeah.
have said that. You know how they do that with certain awards.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, it was voted on by coaches, and most teams we play against know, like, dang, we ran this play perfectly, and this dude just came out nowhere and blocked the layup. Like,
Yep.
dang, my guards getting to the goal, but they can't finish nothing because they got that big man down there.
Yep.
Like, so coaches know who deserves certain things. And so I feel like that should definitely be considered at least. That should definitely be in consideration for who wins something. So, but I digress. Uh, I'm glad my numbers spoke for me, but
Yeah.
sometimes guys' numbers don't speak for them for them in the stat sheet every night. And Pat Bell spoke on that. And I remember he was on I want to say JJ Redick's podcast not too long ago, and he was saying I love Rudy Gobert. He's a great player. He changed the game. You know, great at what he does. Like I'm not taking anything away from him,
Mm-hmm.
but he was like, but the system is tailored for him. Like the way they decide is tailored for somebody like Rudy Gobert. Because I'm not getting rebounds and like leading the league in blocks and nothing like that. And he was like, and Pat Bell was like, I average like 2 steals and a block a game as a guard. And
Mm-hmm.
like people know what impact I have, but like my name isn't big enough or whatever for whatever reason. It's like it's just Pat Bell. Like it's not no big deal. But you Rudy Gobert and you top 5 in the league in rebounds, leading the league in blocks. Like it's tailored for you to win. And so I felt them to a certain extent, but at the same time, I was like, hey man, I lead the league in blocks. Hold on. So you know, it's whatever. I feel like there could be a better system in place, but I mean, at the end of the day, we got what we got, and we know what we know. So, moving on, what award you want to go to next? You think MVP?
Uh, let's say that one for last. Let's say that one for last because that's
So that
kind of
for
gonna
that.
be. I think that might be the most interesting one to kind of get into. But we can go straight
Yes.
into coaches. That's kind of just segue into it.
Coach of the
Um,
year.
yeah. So, um, I feel like coach of the year, defensive player of the year, and MVP are actually all very similar as far as the the criteria around it being so fickly. So, a lot of times, that award might go to really MVP and coach of the year are very similar, like very like the criteria around it. So, one year it might be the coach, the best coach on the best team with the best record. That's what the best coach is. The next year
Yeah.
it might go to the coach who did the most with the least. Um, like you might have a team that was seventh in the conference, and they might have went. Let's say they had a 45 win season, which ain't bad, but it's a little above 500. Pretty manageable.
Right.
And next year they turn around and have third in the conference or top three in the conference, and they win 50 something games, like say 55 games, so a 10 game difference. Then like, oh man, he turned the game around, turned the season around. It's a whole different team. He should win coach of the year.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like all the different narratives that they spin behind it is what they push for coach of the year being. Um, and I feel like a blend of all of those is what they should have, but it has to be very consistent. That's the problem, inconsistent. So I feel like the coach who has the most impact. Um, and when I say impact, that's a very subjective thing to really kind of get into. So the coach who, man, coach is kind of weird because it's like you can't really be like, you have to really know the game to be like, oh, that coach is doing something special. Looking at ATOs and looking at late game plays and subtle adjustments that they make that it's gonna take a while to catch up on. Um, but I feel like coach of the year should go to the coach who, from last year to this year, what's the impact that's been changed? Because that's the way you can really tell. Because you can't be like every year you can get a award to Greg Popovich because the Spurs are going to be legitimate, whatever. Or every year you can get the award to the Warriors because Steve Kerr had the Warriors up there consistently. Or During that time, you could have gave it to air exposure because the Heat were going to be top 3 in the East in their sleep. You know what I mean? So, is that fair? No, not really. So let's look at from last year to this year. What adjustment has this coaches made? So that's kind of where I have to look into it, and that goes back to what I said for defensive play of the year. You have to look at the film session. You have to look at the detail of the ATOs and what plays they drew up and what adjustments they made, how they changed the substitution pattern. And that's the more detail into the weed stuff that you don't get into a lot of times when talking about coach of the year. So, what adjustments and changed from last year to this season, and then as far as stats and stuff, you can't really look at that for a coach, really. It's tough to look at statistical things besides wins and losses. So that's the best way I can think about seeing a coach of the year. Like, what changes from last year to this year did the coach make? So um I know that's a really loose answer. It's not really anything to stick to, but I just feel like that's probably the best thing you can say for coach of the year. It's just like last year to this year, what adjustments and changes have you made, and how did that impact the wins and losses from last year to this year?
That's pretty good, like logic to put behind it. I will offer you this. You said there not really stats to throw out for deciding coach of the year. I will offer you this. A good stat to look at for who deserves coach of the year or what should add to someone's case. How many games did your team win by less than 5 points? If
Okay.
you're winning a lot of games by less than 5 points, then you are doing something right coaching wise, because that's where coaching really gets to the nitty gritty. Like I'll never forget this. Uh, my first year here at Columbus State. This was back when I was still a defensive guy. Like, well, I am still a defensive guy, but this was back when I was just like block shots, get rebounds, score in the paint when you can type guy.
Yeah.
So coach in crunch time would sometimes take me out and put a guard in another score, and like so we have another offensive option out there because I'm not really an offensive option. I'm not somebody we playing through. So if we was ever behind or in crunch time like that, he might start going offense defense. Like, all right, put so and so in for him, and then all right, we foul. Then we on defense. Nelson go back in.
Mm-hmm.
And then they fouled us. We on offense. Go back in. So he used to do that for me. Offense. I used to go offense defense. So this was one of those games he was doing that. So the game was tied, right? And I'm out the game. We had the ball, and Coach, I'm standing behind Coach Moore because I'm nervous, so I'm not sitting down. I'm standing behind him just like this. And Coach Moore said, "Bring the ball right here. Call timeout." The guard ran the ball up court, passed half court, called timeout. We called timeout. Coach Moore turned around and grabbed his clipboard. I was standing right behind him. I said, "Take us home, Doc." And I shook a hand like this because he always calls himself the Peach Belt Doc Rivers. He swear he Doc Rivers. I said, "Take us home, Doc." And I shook a hand. He said, "I got you, boy." And then we walked over and huddled up. He drew up a play. And play work. Guy got a bucket. Won the game by 2.
Mm-hmm.
So after the game, he gonna tell Coach Butler, said, "You know what this man gonna tell me?" Talk about me. He said, "You know what this man gonna tell me when I called that timeout?" I said, "What?" He said, "He gonna talk about some. Take us home, Doc." In the middle of the game, he said, "Boy, Nelson, one thing I know I'm gonna do around you, I know I'm gonna get a laugh." And all that else. But I think that's a huge impact in coaching, because if you're winning close games, that has a lot to do with coaching, not so much about talent. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I know we talk about guys being clutch and all that, which is true. You got to be, you got to have good players to pull out games. But I'm a firm believer in good teams find a way to win games and bad teams find a way to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a firm believer in that. A good team could be on the ropes against a bad team. We've been in that situation several times. A good team could be on the ropes against a bad team, and a bad team would give it away. You ever seen that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, this team really was supposed to be beating them, and they're winning, and the next thing you know, it's like they gave them the game
Mm-hmm.
on some like bonehead stuff. So that I'm a firm believer in, like, good teams find a way to win, bad teams find a way to lose. So if you win a lot of games close, I feel like that should help your case for coach of the year. I ain't gonna say you should win, like, but that should help your case. If you
Yeah.
say what you said also, like, if your team has improved from last year to this year, tremendously, or your win loss record is a lot better than it was last year, or if you're doing the most with the least, such as like being top three, top four, and you don't have an all star or something like that, I feel like you deserve a lot of credit for that. But winning close games should be a good criteria to look at. I don't know if that's actually being considered, but I think it should in my own world. But as I mentioned, they don't pay me to make these decisions. So uh, I think if you're winning a lot of close games, you are definitely doing something right as a coach. Because at the end of the day, you drawing that play up.
Yep.
9 times out of 10. We think LeBron walking over there with a clipboard, but he's not. I
Mm-hmm.
guarantee you that Frank Vogel, I guarantee you Steve Kerr, I guarantee you Greg Popovich, Doc Rivers, all of them go over there with that clipboard. They might discuss it with somebody, or they might
Yeah.
even ask like, "Hey, do you want this last shot?" Or "Hey, do you think who y'all want to go with?" Like they might give players some of the power, but at the end of the day, they don't want like, "All right, let's do it." Bop, 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 pass it here, throw it here. You shoot it. This what we going for.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So I like, and I had to shout my boy Cole Moore out with that story because I consider him to be a good coach. I wouldn't play for him if he wasn't, or if I didn't think so. But I
Yeah.
consider him to be a good coach, and that moment probably solidified in my mind because like the fact that I said take us home and he took us home, we won again, got a good shot off of it, and so. I don't forget stuff like that. So in my mind, I'm like, man, I'll probably put extra pressure on him by saying that, and he still made it happen. So I mean, of course, like a player made the shot, but
Mm-hmm.
hey, you would have had the shot if it wasn't for him. So I don't think we take. I think we take that for granted sometimes. It ain't like he jacked it up from half court and it just went in. He got
Yeah.
a good shot off because of the play. So that was another thing. Like man, I feel like those are now. There's not a lot of stats we can look at, but
Mm-hmm.
that's certainly one. So that would go into my definition of what should win Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I can't remember it's 4 or 5 or 6, but it's like if you lose a game by 5 or less, let's say 5 because you said 5. So 5 or less, it's a coaching decision. If it's 6 or more, it's a player's fault.
Right.
So basically, that quote means that if you lose a game by 6 or more, it's out of the coach's hands. It's because the players weren't playing well enough, that you weren't executing the game plan well enough, and the coach cannot coach effort. The coach cannot coach how hard you play your intensity and stuff. That's something the coach just can't do. No matter how great of a coach I am, if you ain't gonna bring it tonight, then there's nothing I can draw up to make you play harder. You feel me?
This is
So
true.
that's just something that is out of the coach's hands. But you bringing everything you got, and I'm putting everybody. I'm making the right substitution. I'm drawing up the right plays. I'm making the right calls, right play calls, and everything. 5 or less, that's me, because that's 2 possessions right there.
Facts.
You know. So if, like you said, if we had a 3 point game and I don't sub Nelson at the right time, that's on me.
And
You know,
that's
people.
also happened. That's also happened
Yeah.
to us. And he even came to me like, "Hey, I should have had you in the game." And I
Yeah.
appreciate him saying it. It took a big man for him to admit that. So he
Yeah.
knew when he was wrong, but I also know when he is right, and that's why like I can agree with him about a lot of things. Like I know he want to win too. For
Hmm.
him to have been like, "Hey, Nelson, I should have had you in the game. That's my fault. It's on me."
Yeah.
Like that adds to my respect for him.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of times you might have a blunder like that, and it's like, dang, I should have had to do it in the game. You know, and so you might, like you said before, you might coach him like, hey, you want this shot? All right, let's go to you. But in the back of his mind, like, maybe I should get this shot to him over here. You know what I mean? Like the late game decisions of, do I go with the obvious choice of a KD, or do I draw this play up for Joe Harris or Patty Mills? Those occasional pocket, like how do you swing and judge that? Like KD's my guy. Like everybody knows KD and Kyrie. That's just the obvious choice.
Thanks.
But when do you decide to draw this play up for Patty Mills? When you decide to draw that play up for Joe Harris to get him in the corner? Like that's the little stuff that's just like you got to be a real solid coach for that. So I feel like stuff like that means a lot more than people realize, because it's like, hey, all stay ready. All right, come on now, stay ready. Keep your head in the game. But how do you know as a coach when that player is ready and not ready? The little stuff like that that I don't feel like people consider when it goes into coach of the year. Like having your thumb on the pulse of the team to be like, it's your night. Let's go. Stuff like that. Like Popovich thing where he Well, some nights he'll ride the starters, but some nights he'll be like, yo, bench got it. Let's go ahead and finish them out. Like what?
And I like that. I can appreciate things like that also.
Like that's tough, bro. So like, how do you how do you judge that as a coach? That's something I've always been impressed with. So it's like stuff like that they got to consider more into that goes into like the coach of the year.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too. Because there's a ton of different philosophies. But there's an old saying in basketball: coaches win games. I mean, I'm sorry, players win games and coaches lose games.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big saying in basketball. Because when teams win, players get all the credit. Like a coach could call up, like we could be down by one, coach drop a great play, and the player get a wide open shot, hit the buzzer beater. Oh my God! Did you see what so and so did? LeBron hits this shot. Whatever.
Yeah.
All the credit goes to that coach. I mean, to that player, but nobody looks at the coach like, "Hey, that was a great play, coach."
Mm-hmm.
Only other coaches will be like, "That was a great play.
Yep.
What
Yep.
you drew up worked perfectly." And so I think back to not last year, but the year before last, when in the bubble. I know you remember this when the play was